Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Be Heard Women Empowering Women. I'm so excited about my guest today, Lisa Erickson. She is a chakra-based energy worker, writer, and teacher specializing in women's energetics, sexual trauma healing, and chakra manifesting. And she's the author of Chakra Empowerment for Women, Self-Guided Techniques for Healing Trauma, Owning Your Power and Finding Overall Wellness, and also the art and science of meditation and how to deepen and personalize your practice. So did I get that right?
That's absolutely right. Thanks so much for having me, Marie.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. And I started the podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about this. I wrote a book because 2020 drove everybody crazy and went out seeking new things, I think.
Yes.
And I'm well past retirement. My husband has Parkinson's, and being in the house with him constantly drove me a little crazy. So I started to write. And my first book was a memoir, and it was called Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons.
Mm.
I learned how to self-publish and market and all that stuff. So it really gave me an outlet, so that I just didn't identify as a caretaker.
Yeah.
And out of that came two more books.
Good for you.
Well, I did the DNA ancestry, and my father was adopted, and he thought he was like three-quarters Italian, and he was 100% Irish.
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
So I had to do the research on that. I went back to the 18th century, so of course I had to write a book. Okay.
Yeah.
Out of that, I was doing the videos and putting them on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and then I said I'm going to figure out how to do podcasts, and I did.
Good.
Very teachable.
Yes.
I'm 74 years old.
Yeah.
But
So good for you. You got to keep learning, right?
yeah,
So we keep our brain going.
I do. And people never believe I'm 74 to begin with because my family has like really good genetics with that. But my mind is pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So that's how the podcast came about. And let me ask you, because chakras, which I know about them, but I haven't studied them, in relationship to dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
They say that your dreams reflect what chakra is being accessed.
Mm. Well, there's different theories on that. I don't work so much with the chakras and dreams, but just to back up in case there's anyone listening who doesn't know anything about them, the chakras are energy centers in what's called our energy body. And energy body is kind of between your physical body and your psyche or your spirit. And there's different energy body mappings that have come from all over the world, from both spiritual traditions and energy medicine traditions. Most of them come from the East. The word chakra comes from the East. And each of these chakras, the seven main ones, are linked to different parts of ourself. So now linking into your question, yeah, depending on the emotions felt in a dream, you could map it to a different chakra. Does it have to do with fear? Does it have to do with wanting to be loved? Does it have to do with shame? Does it have to do with, it could be positive, right? Speaking your truth. Yeah. There could be all different things, and you could kind of map the emotions of the dream to a particular chakra and a messaging or work that you are meant to do around that theme in your life.
Okay, so what I dream about, I mean, sometimes I have the day residue, and all that stuff. I mean, in psychology, that kind of stuff, and I understand why.
Yeah.
But my most recurrent dreams are not being able to find my car, not being able to find the classroom that I'm supposed to be in. So lost, I would say, or being lost. So is that connected to?
Yeah. Well, the first question I would have are these recurring dreams on and off throughout your life, or are those more recent?
I'd say the past few years.
Yeah. So usually you would read that as, yeah, there's some fear possibly of actually losing memory, right? Which is not uncommon as we grow older, right? That we all have this fear.
Yeah.
And so that could be very active for you. And or it could be that or symbolic of something else. Just, you've been trying to find your way. What does it mean to not be able to find something like your keys that give you access to move, right? To go where you want to go. And what is the symbolism of that? And that kind of reading from a chakra perspective, we're looking at the third eye, which is in our forehead, which has to do with dreaming. If there's fear involved, we may be looking at the heart or lower chakras, because those are linked more to fears that we have. So that's another way to work with it.
That's so interesting. My
Yeah.
master always talks about chakras. He's I forget what he calls himself. He has a master's in like all religions.
Oh, interesting.
I forget what it's called. But anyway, he
Yeah.
talks Buddhism and all different things. And the Sakaras, am I pronouncing that right? Sakaras. I think that's from Buddhism. We won't get into-
Samskaras is the word I'm
Yes,
familiar with.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, I was pronouncing it wrong. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about that and I relate to that in my book, even though I can't pronounce it, I can spell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how I see that in myself. I want to go into a little bit healing the sexual trauma that you talked about, because a lot of us have it. I mean, I was assaulted, it was an attempted rape. I wasn't raped, but I was physically assaulted and I was able to get away. But the trauma is, to me, just as great whether the act is completed or not, because it's an act of violence and it's something that damages your trust forever. I think
That's
it's just
exactly
like
right.
very hard. So, what can you talk about with that area?
Well, and it impacts different people differently, but some of the common themes is there is a general loss of a sense of safety, right? You never exactly feel the same again. And that is linked to the root chakra, which is at our tailbone. This is like the anchor for spirit staying in our body, our psyche being present in our body. So sometimes people develop tendencies to sort of disconnect, disassociate. That's more common with children who underwent like kind of abuse in childhood. So then they would develop a survival strategy of kind of not being present, going away. But then in life, that means whenever there's conflict, whenever there's anything that triggers fear, there's a tendency to check out, right? Yeah. We talk about the fight, flight, or freeze response. That's a sort of mental flight response. So sometimes with individuals like that, we're really working on the root chakra, how to stay present. You talked about trust. I mean, that can undermine you in so many ways. And that's often related to the heart chakra, the third eye. We might be doing work there to help heal, empowering those chakras to help reinstate a sense of trust within a clear sense of our reality, right?
Yes.
I think the other thing that happens is it changes your relationship to sexuality, because maybe before that, all of a sudden it feels dangerous. And that can have a real impact on women and men, but it can have a real impact on individuals around, if it feels dangerous, it doesn't feel safe, then that even impacts their relationships in loving relationships, right? So then that is linked to our second chakra, which is in our pelvic bowl. So there's a lot of different ways it can impact us.
Yeah. I unfortunately, with my family, my mother's very cold and my father was an alcoholic. So I didn't really grow up with a lot of love and attention. And,
right.
And I was the oldest of four. So I was also made a caretaker at a very young age. I was
responsibility.
5 years old, And then abandonment. My parents had a third child. I was 5 and my brother was 4. And they put us in an orphanage for a week.
Because they just couldn't handle it, or what happened?
They said later on in life, they said it was because they had no one to take care of us. And my mother had to stay in the hospital a few days. However, that doesn't hold water because my mother had sisters and a mother. And I don't know the real reason, but I do know the sense of abandonment that my brother and I felt from that has never left.
Yeah.
He is just devastated by it also. So I had that going on.
Yeah.
And I had like an amnesia of after that until I was maybe 11 or 12. So I don't remember any of that. And of course, all of this stuff, I ended up doing all the wrong coping strategies because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
First, it was like a man, and that's going to save me. And then it was alcohol and drugs, and that was going to mute the pain and all this stuff. And I'm sober 33 years, 33, yeah. Oh, 34 in May. Give myself that year. But I went through a lot of therapy. Once I got sober,
Yeah.
they told me you are cross-addicted and dual diagnosed. You have chronic depression and panic disorder, and you're cross-addicted. Basically, you can be addicted to
Yeah.
anything with my personality. Well, that's the best thing that ever happened, because then I could dive into,
Yeah. How
things.
you were impacted. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did 9 straight years of therapy. I did individual, group, and I went inpatient
Yeah.
twice after rehab.
Yeah.
And, I did what I had to do, and it really was the right thing for me.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there. I know there's a lot of young women that are in abusive, controlling relationships.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought maybe my book will help them. Maybe the podcast will help them. So, did you have anything in your life, not necessarily physical or sexual, but like a trauma or a big obstacle that you had to overcome? And do you mind sharing about it?
Yeah. Well, I did have a friend who was sexually assaulted in college, and really the aftermath of that, she ended up dropping out. It really majorly affected her. I would not call my childhood, there wasn't anything that rose to the level of trauma, but my father was in the Air Force. We moved every 2 years, and then my parents divorced, and all of that was really difficult and challenging, right? And then I had a major illness after the birth of my first child that also, influenced me. I was hospitalized, and it was very difficult for a while. So and medical trauma, really, a lot of people get traumatized by the medical establishment, even, when they're getting good care. It's just a bureaucracy that you have to manage, right?
Mhm.
So I think there were a lot of different things that contributed to my interest in women's energetics and in sexual trauma healing. And I work with a lot of people who are in therapy or were in therapy, and now they're looking for either a complementary modality, because talk therapy has gotten them to a certain place, but now they still have things they feel kind of lodged in their body, or they have patterns that they haven't been able to break, even though they know how they got those patterns, right? That's what chakra work can do. It can be this tool. And then I also work with women who either don't have access to therapy, right? Because if you don't have insurance, it can be very difficult to access.
Right.
Or they're not interested in therapy. I do try to urge them towards that, but they want to do other kinds of healing methods. And so I think chakra work can be either a complement to talk therapy, or it could be the first help that someone gets.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're interested in things like that,
Were you able to, which is the way people think it is, did you go to college right after high school?
I did, yes, I
Yeah,
did.
that was another part of my resentments and
Yeah.
problems. I was an excellent student. I had all the advanced courses in high school, thought I was going to college. I wanted to be an English teacher. And my parents chose my graduation day to tell me that no, they weren't going to support that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything else in place. I hadn't looked into anything else.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt trapped
Yeah.
in my situation. The only way, there was no way out of my household as a 17, 18-year-old that I could think of. I mean, I'm 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
And every time I would come up with something, they'd say no. Like I said, well, I'm going to join the service. You can't do that. Only tramps go into service. That's what my mother would say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. No, something will happen to you. Like I was just so
Yeah.
held back that marriage was the only thing left.
Yeah.
In my, messed up mind. And the guy, I think I was in love with him, my first husband, etc. But I think most of it was about getting out of that house. And then, of course, I walked into another trap because he was also an alcoholic and controlling, and here I am again.
Very common. That's what we do. We do turn to what we know, even if when we think we're trying to get away from it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And that is part of chakra teachings, is that you're kind of holding these things unconsciously, you're holding them energetically. And then that is what feels comfortable to you. Right. So to get comfortable with something new and be able to be in a true new situation, you first have to really go inward and understand what you're used to how you've come to expect to be treated, and then how do you change that?
Yes.
To expect to be treated better. Yeah, but it's like written in there energetically.
It's really hard to break free because I had to leave. I mean, it was very abusive, not physically, but emotionally and mentally physical.
Yeah.
And I had to leave because I was becoming like to the point of suicidal with him. It was awful. And of course I had, some time and I was out there, and then I was scared to be alone. I had never been alone. I had either lived with my parents or this first husband, and it was terrifying. So I spent a lot of time in the bar. In fact, I got a job bartending. And my alcohol use was still pretty maintainable. But I ended up getting married again because I wanted children. Now, that is another thing that my generation, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. So we were kind of taught that you should have children too. That was another thing.
Yeah.
And that biological clock, whether it exists or not, I decided that I wanted children, and I got married again specifically for that person. And he wasn't an alcoholic, but he was I call it a toxic male, toxic masculinity. The control issues were over the top, you know. And when I did finally divorce him, I was 28 years old. I had 2 children, and I went to college.
Good for you.
Because if you really, really want to do something, and it doesn't, and it might take you a while to figure it out, and you might have to make a lot of mistakes, which I did, but I was able to go to college, which I was very, very proud of that. So I just think too that now, did you have any obstacles in career, anything that made you work to get over, like any big, I know you talked a little bit about.
Well, part of the way that I first got interested in the chakras was when I first started working, I really started experiencing, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were stress headaches and stomach aches. So I was having these chronic stomach aches and headaches. And, this is 35 years ago. So you go to the doctor, they do all the tests, they say there's nothing wrong with you. Basically, it's in your head, right? I'm putting that in air quotes. But I did, fortunately, eventually come to a doctor who was more progressive and was like, oh, well, you might want to try yoga or meditation, which weren't that common then, right? Now I live in California and there's yoga and meditation everywhere. But this, at the time, there wasn't that much. This doctor was sort of unusual. And I did manage to find a class. And for those who don't know, the chakras are intricately linked into yoga. Like the yoga poses, we think of them as having been designed around just your physical body, your muscles, and what stretches when. But in fact, it's based on the energy body and on moving energy through for clearing of different emotions and healing and things like that. So a good yoga workout is mind body. It actually helps clear out different emotions, not just the body. So that was originally how I got interested in the chakras, and it helped right away. So then that intrigued me, like, what is this about? And I believe, in medicine, I go to the doctor and all that sort of stuff, but it really opened me up to this idea of holistic medicine, that everything, when we're experiencing something physically, there's an emotional component. When we're experiencing something emotionally, there's a physical component, like my stress headaches and stomach aches. And how do you treat the whole person? So that's what really got me interested in chakra work in the first place. So with something like trauma, there's very often physical aspects of that. Now, you haven't mentioned whether you had any physical health issues that might have been tied to your childhood trauma, but we have these big studies now, one called the ACE study. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Adverse childhood effects, I believe is what it is, the ACE study, ACE, tracking, thousands of individuals who had experienced some kind of trauma in their childhood. And the statistics showed as they moved through life, they had a much higher risk of different physical diseases and also, of course, mental health issues. So we know how you get impacted for life by these events, right? Nothing is just your body or just your mind. It impacts your whole being, and then it might show up in either place later on, unless you're able to find a way to heal.
Yeah, I have many. I had breast cancer 6 years ago. I'm 6 years cancer free, thank God.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a double mastectomy and I didn't even think about it. And they really didn't discuss it with me. They just started talking about implants. And
Yeah.
it wasn't even like anybody said you don't have to get implants. Or I don't know. I just got them.
Yeah.
Well, I had the part where my body did not like the implants. And my left breast, I got what's called red breast syndrome. Through that breast, bright red. 2 years, 3 years, wouldn't go away. I had infections. He took them out. He put more in. And finally, I said, take them out. This is ridiculous what I'm going through. And it's just make me flat. I don't need it. I don't need that. So we did that. Then I had an infection in my stomach that they couldn't figure out. I was in the hospital for like a whole summer. This is like 2014. And they ended up taking out 85% of my stomach.
Wow.
I mean, it just goes on and on, these stuff, like all the things that I've had. And Sjogren's syndrome, which is crazy because people don't know enough about it. They think it's just dry eyes and dry mouth, but it's more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I have lymphedema. It's like I really have an ongoing thing with doctors too, because I will talk about something for more than one visit and they kind of like not brush me off, but like explain it in a simplistic way and it's nothing. And then it takes a year or so and then it turns out it was something. So I try to tell people, you have to be your own advocate with doctors.
Yeah.
You know your body. And if you think there's something wrong, there's something wrong, So I think I might need to look into some more chakra. I never did it. I never did the work and I really should.
Well, you did a lot of therapy and I do think that causes changes in your energy body too. So you can kind of go through it in different ways. As you heal through talk therapy, it's releasing obstructions in your energy body, right? If you go through it towards it the energetic way, you're coming at it a different angle, but there's multiple ways to kind of heal and move past your patterns, that you may have developed.
And I'm usually, even though I'm supposedly have chronic depression and anxiety disorder, I usually deal with everything pretty well. Like I just developed early on comedic reactions. Like I make a joke out of everything. I try to think positive. I like to research and that keeps me going. Excuse me 1 minute.
Sure.
Going through something now with my voice.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm getting at is you also talked about energetics, I believe, in your book, Women's Energetics, and you specialize. Now, what is that exactly?
Yeah. So that is the ways that women's and men's energy bodies are different and how it ties into our reproductive health cycles, right? So for women, this plays a big part in our health, is our menstrual cycle when we're still menstruating. And then if you go through pregnancy, how that impacts your body, postpartum, then perimenopause, menopause, and how our body changes post-menopause. There's all these different things. And what people don't realize, they think, oh, well, that's just your reproductive system. No, actually, at each different phase, it impacts your heart very heavily. Women's and men's heart health is very different, largely because of women's reproductive phases. It impacts your skeletal system, right? All of us as women, they start talking to us about osteoporosis, right? Yeah. And so it isn't just your reproductive system. The hormonal shifts that we go throughout our life impact all different parts of our physical body. They also are mirrored in our energy body. So there's ways to work with your energy cycles at different phases of your life. And one of the big ones is boundaries, right? There's this word empath that has come up a lot. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm an empath, meaning I sort of take on other people's emotions. If I'm around people that are upset, then I get upset. I can't separate my emotions from theirs. This can happen to both men and women, but it's more common for women. And there's like a whole energetic side to that. So chakra work can help, and it's related to our cycles. Like we're more sensitive at certain times than others. So there's ways to help women learn how to maintain energetic boundaries through chakra work.
Yeah, that sounds really important. So let me ask you, what's the number one go-to if you're having like an exceptionally bad day? Because you're human, and even though you're very well schooled in all these things, so what's your go-to? Like you're having a horrible day.
Yeah, if I'm just feeling, I'm feeling really down, I'm
Yeah.
going to go with receiving into my heart chakra. And anyone can try that right now if they want, listening.
Yeah.
Like you just imagine it's really your heart chakra is right in the center of your chest, right at your breastbone, right? So your physical heart's off to the left. This is more in the center. And
Mhm.
you visualize light there and just imagine more light is pouring in from every direction. Just beautiful light. And you can pick your favorite color light. I like to use very soothing colors like pink. Green is the traditional color because it's associated with like plant life and healthy air, healthy living. So if you're feeling fatigued, you might use green, and you just activate your heart chakra, which is a form of self-care, you know. So that's kind of my go-to. But from there, it's really going to depend on what is going on in my life. Like I'm in a moment, a day where I need more energy or I need more confidence. I might go to the navel chakra, just below your navel. You visualize a flame, like a little candle flame, like fire. It's really literally like the fire in your belly, right?
Mhm.
If you're feeling anxious, you might go to your root chakra. So that's kind of what the book talks about is depending on how you're feeling, which chakra would you activate, you know, in your daily life? And then depending on what you're trying to heal, which chakras would you work with long term? So it's sort of in the moment and long term. Which chakras do you need to activate?
Hmm. My minister loves to do tapping.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
It's another way to work with the.
Talk about that for people
Yeah.
that don't know. I'll let you explain what it is because you're
Yeah.
the expert.
Well, you know, there's a lot of different tapping techniques. There's a formal one called emotional freedom technique, you know, where it's really about releasing trapped emotions. Or if you're feeling something negative, like anger, like sadness, really trying to feel where you feel it in your body and tap it away. In relationship to the chakras, I think the tapping can also help you activate. So it's not just about releasing things that need to kind of leave your body, releasing tensions or emotions. It's also about activating. So you can tap your chest and it helps activate your heart chakra.
Mhm.
You tap around your throat, you're activating your voice, your ability to speak confidently and clearly.
Mhm.
Activating, tapping your third eye, you're activating your intuition. So there's a lot of different ways to work
I
with it.
usually, if I'm upset, I'm right here.
Yeah, so that's sort of between your heart and your throat. And so
Yeah,
you're activating both your heart and your
that's
throat.
good.
Yeah,
I'm right there.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned my minister twice already. You could see that he's not the common
Yeah,
type.
I know he sounds very unusual.
Have you heard of Unity Church? I don't know if you've ever heard of
I
Unity.
have. I don't necessarily know that much about it in comparison to like Universalist Church. I
It's
know
like
it's not
a
the same.
no, it's a metaphysical religion.
Yeah, yeah,
Some of us don't even like to call it a religion,
yeah,
as we don't. My Reverend Taylor Stevens is my minister. So Taylor always says, "There's no big guy in the sky that you can give your problems to," which is very unusual. So that's why I don't like to say it's a church because most churches have a God figure,
yeah,
somebody, and he is more of believer in the universe, and the energy of the universe is what accomplishes things, which when you think about it makes sense. If everybody's walking around in a very terrible mood, that energy is going to expand
yeah,
exponentially. So that's what we do. And
yeah,
we talk about. And you'll have to check us out. Unity of the Palm Beaches. It has their own Facebook page.
yeah.
Yeah, I keep telling him he should write a book. He writes a blog. He just, I
You
really
could
wish.
probably turn that into a book. Yeah, I
That's
started
what I keep
blogging too.
doing.
20 years ago, or
Yeah.
yeah, more than that, 20, 25 years ago, I started a blog and that sort of did start me writing. It's
Yeah,
a good way to turn to write. Yeah.
right. Well, listen, our time is actually running out. So let me ask you, where do you go from here? Are you going to write another book? Do you have big plans or something? What are you
Yeah,
doing?
right now I'm doing a practitioner. I do a lot of workshops and private session work. So I'm really focused on workshops and coming up with new workshops. And I'm also doing practitioner training for people to learn how to do this chakra work with others. to help more people become familiar with it. So that could turn into a book. I'm not yet sure. I'm still sort of developing. This book came out of workshops I run. So that's kind of like, I'm kind of a teacher first and then a writer, turn it from what I teach into a book. So people can learn themselves that can't come to a workshop, right?
Exactly.
So some of this stuff may turn into a book down the road.
Tell us your website.
Enlightened Energetics. EnlightenedEnergetics.com. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Chakra Empowerment. So anyone can find me at any of those things. And from there, you can link to the book also.
That was great. Thank you so much. We've learned so much. I got so much information for myself. It was amazing. This interview is going to be on my podcast, Be Heard, Empowering Women. And it's also going to be on YouTube. And thank you so much. And I hope you do another one.
Pleasure talking to you. And I wish you much healing and empowerment.
Oh, thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.